Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Photography Live and Uncut. This is show number 101. I've got a little apology to make about last week, so I do apologize. We had to cancel it at the 11th hour. My guest, Jay Vulture, got called away. So we're going to have Jay on at another time. Secondly, I'd just like to thank all the lovely messages and comments I got when I celebrated my 100th show with Ted Forbes last time out. Really, really much appreciated from all of you. So this week's show is something new for me. I've never interviewed a person who's steeped in photojournalism. My guest is John Lehmann from Vancouver in Canada. John, welcome to Photography Live and Uncut.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon for you. Thank you so much for joining me at this hour. We got a little bit confused as regards to what the time difference was for a second before we.
I thought I had another hour to eat my lunch, but I guess not.
Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry about that. But in the pre-show, you managed to get that done, and we're talking about other things which we'll come on to because I'm really, really intrigued at the type of gear that you work in the field. But really, just to start off with, I've seen you on Big Head Taco quite a few times with the guy talking about all this new equipment. Great fun shows. He certainly brings a smile to my face. How did you meet the guy?
I made fun of him on Instagram, actually. He does this series of photos where he takes pictures of his shoes and some kind of new camera or something. And I was like, I don't know. To me, that just seemed kind of ridiculous. So I had just finished covering a forest fire, and my cameras were a little beat up, and they were taped up to keep the dust out. And I had like some steel-toed shoot boots on. And so they were really dusty, and they had some charcoal marks on them, I believe. And so I posted that on Instagram and sort of called him out, because I was just thinking, this is what a real photographer's day looks like. And I was doing it in a fun way, and he had seen that, and so we started chatting, and then he asked me to come on one of his shows, and I believe the first one we did was the Leica Q versus the Leica.
That's right.
With the 28, and so he invited me onto one of his shows, and I was like, okay, but I think I'd like something decent to come on and talk about that would get interest going. And so Leica had just sent me the Q at the time, I can't remember, or he had the Q and I had the M with the 28, and I said, well, let's compare these two cameras because I think that's something that people would be really interested in. And yeah. The lenses line up and the bodies line up as a good comparison, and I think that's something that people would be interested in. Either they're going to buy A or they're going to buy B, and so we shot the video. The video was like 45 minutes long, and I think to this date it's one of his most viewed videos. So a star was born, I guess.
I can imagine it was actually one of the most watched show that he's put together, because you're talking about Leica cameras, which I think a lot of photographers think, well, I wish I could afford to buy one, but then they really want to know what it's all about. And this is why I was asking you at the beginning. Obviously, being a photojournalist, you read about the greats that use the Leica cameras, and still some of them today still using the Leica cameras. Can you put it into words? What is so special for you when you're out in the field using the Leica camera?
Well, the quality of the Leica lenses is amazing. The sharpness and the ability to blend in a bit better. I mean, it sounds so cliche, like you're sort of stealthy, and in some ways you are. It's just not a loud, obnoxious, in-your-face camera. And if you're doing documentary work, I think it's a great product to have and to use, and people feel, I don't think people feel as intimidated when somebody's being like many, often when I use it, like people are like, I'm not even sure if I'm a real photographer or not, because they're expecting somebody with bigger, clunkier gear, which I also love and use all the time. But if you're a mechanic, you need a right tool for the job. It doesn't matter what kind of mechanic you are. You're going to get the job done, and your gear is all about the right thing for the right situation. I mean, you can pick up a Nikon D500 or a Nikon D4S, and you can do just as good a job. It's just really, your ability as a photographer at the end of the day that comes through your abilities, and it doesn't matter what you're using. Hell, I use an iPhone for a lot of stuff, and I've sold.
It's a very good. portfolio
right?
there of some iPhone photographs, and you got some good tips on there as well on your website. Let's take you right back, John, when you were a kid. What's the first recollection of a camera in your household with your mum and dad?
So my stepfather got me my first camera. His office had ordered a new photocopier, and they ordered a Minolta. And I guess there was some deal on that if you ordered a new photocopier, you got a camera with it. So they gave him a Minolta Weathermatic A. So somebody may want to Google that, but basically it was a waterproof camera that could go down to 60 feet, I think. You might recall it was yellow, and it took 110 film. And I had a lot of fun with that for about a year. I used to take it swimming out in the rain. I experimented with it, and it was a lot of fun. It was a really good first camera because it was almost indestructible. And then when I was about 12 or 13, I got my first serious camera from my father. He bought me a Pentax K1000 and a 50mm lens.
Yeah, you go.
And that's what I started with, and that's what I used for a long time. That was a great setup and a great camera.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned about those two particular models, the Minolta and the Pentax. I've said this many times on my previous shows. When I went into my local camera shop, I never can remember seeing, this would be around about the 1960s. I never can remember seeing boxes of Nikon, boxes of Canons. It was always Praktica, Pentax, and Minoltas that I saw. I ended up buying a Zenit E. The good old Russian brick camera, which served me very well to get me interested. So you from the Minolta, you got into the Pentax and worked on there. Was really photography now sort of becoming a real major hobby for yourself, or were you? Yeah,
I used to. I was taking all the family holiday photos. I was taking them for the school newspaper. I was taking them for the school yearbook. And I had an art teacher in high school who let me do, there would be different projects, and you could pick the medium you wanted to do it on. People would pick clay or paint, and I just started asking if I could do photography, and she was like, yes. So she was a great, her ability to let me do it the way I wanted to was very influential in how I did the photography. She also taught a lot of art history, which is how I learned a lot about lighting. And
would you say that period of your time really sort of set it in stone what you wanted to do when you left school?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I didn't know that you could actually make a living out of it, but I knew it was something I had a big interest in, and the foundation blocks were all there. I had a camera. I had an art teacher who was, would let me experiment, and she was also very good at teaching composition and Rembrandt lighting and that kind of thing. And it wasn't until in grade 11 or grade 12 I was like, now it's time to make a decision. And my mom was like, well, figure out what kind of photography you want to do and figure out where you can go. And I had recently seen Nick Nolte in Under Fire, which was a movie about a photojournalist in Nicaragua, I believe, in the 60s or 70s. Or maybe 80s, I can't remember. And I found it fascinating, this whole career of photojournalism and the idea of storytelling and the importance of content. And, I can appreciate photographic art, the site that hangs on the galleries, but it's too finicky. I prefer photojournalism where you're trying to get a message across and trying to tell a story. And it can be a little sloppy. It doesn't have to be perfect all the time.
Yeah, that's right. Because you've got to show that. So let's take it in step here. So you're in college. You're following through on photography. Basically, did you move into photojournalism straight from school?
Yeah. So I was lucky. I was living in Ontario at the time, and there was a college in Ontario that offered a 2-year program in photojournalism. And so the mandate of the college was to graduate people who could work as two-way people at community newspapers. So you could both write and shoot pictures. And I was never a great writer, so I just pursued the photography end.
That was the one thing I was going to ask you, actually, because photojournalism, obviously you've got to take the photographs. Do you actively get involved with the writing of for your work now, or is that done?
Well, I have. I'm lucky that I work at a newspaper where we can still afford to have the division of labor. And so I worry about the photography and telling the story through pictures. And I have colleagues who are, they tell a story through words. And so we'll have many conversations. We'll have conversations before it starts, during, and after. And, you know, sometimes you have to compromise. But at the end of the day, you're both working towards the same goal, and that's, you know, producing the best content you can for the reader.
Yeah. Now, one question I was asking you, you've just recently been awarded the 2016 Journalist of the Year for the Canada, what was it again? Photojournalism in Canada, yeah?
Yes.
But that was for your work for 2015. So it's sort of like a, I don't know how to actually put it. So it's sort of like a retrospective type, an award. What sort of topics and projects did you actually line up for yourself for 2015, or were they in actual fact said, John, we want you to go here, we want you to do this? How does that decision come about?
I'd have to look. So to be awarded Photojournalist of the Year, it's based on a portfolio of 20 images, I believe. And of that 20 images, I was probably responsible for, you know, 50–60% of generating my own content. And I think as a photojournalist, that's when you get the best content, is when you have the idea and you follow through the idea. As much as I love working with word people, they are not visually minded. And so often their stories can be a little bland. So if you can come up with ideas and produce work that's visually based and can be aided by reporters' words, then I think you will have a stronger chance in creating a better portfolio over the course of the year, or a better body of work that you, as a photographer, you'll be happy with.
So this type of work is not just solely in Canada, isn't it? You do quite a bit of traveling. I can see from your portfolio on there's Russia, there's China, and I know you followed the Canadian team in Rio just this last week. Could you just give us a rough idea of how many different countries you would possibly visit in a year?
Well, that's all over the map sometimes. Sometimes really? This year I was in China, Mongolia, and Brazil. And I can't imagine there'll be another foreign trip because they're very expensive. I spend most of my time in Western Canada covering news here. But it's really hard to say what's going to come up. They may have a project somewhere that they want illustrated, but you never know. I have no idea. I could be next week. I could have to go somewhere. Like I don't know. Nothing's that far, plan that far ahead.
Yeah, they don't plan that far ahead. No. What I'd like to do now, John, is go to do a screen share, and let's have a look at your website and pick out 2 or 3 of the portfolios that you've got up there. And as I mentioned to you before, there's 3 in particular that I'd like to ask you to talk through. The one that really catches my attention is Russian Lomo.
Oh, so right here, sorry, I interrupt you, Paul. So this here, the CAJ portfolio, this is the portfolio that...
Oh, right, okay, that's the portfolio.
And let's see here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 of those images were self-generated assignments.
Right. Okay. Oh, that's a pretty decent percentage of that, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a wide topic there. We've got sport here. We've got nature. We've got some study of life. All sorts going on. So, as I said just a while ago, Russian Lomo is one that caught my attention. Purely and simply because we earlier on talked about Leica and Nikon, and also know you've done a little bit of reviewing of the Fuji system. But could you tell us, is this particular project, was it using the Lomo camera, or is it that just the title you gave? What gear were you using?
Right here. Can you guys still see me?
No, you're actually on a
So it's safe to pick my nose right now.
Yeah, it would be, yes.
So I'm just holding up the camera right now that I used.
Okay, just bear with me 1 sec. I'll come back to that. Screen share. Come out of screen share. Right. Okay. Go ahead.
So here's the Russian Lomo.
I'm with you. Yeah.
This is the third one in a series of cameras I bought. I bought one in Canada before I left on eBay.
Yeah.
And it broke down, And after the first shoot in Russia, so I went there. They're easy to buy. They're only like $20 there. I found a store in Moscow that was selling them, so I bought another one. It broke down after its first shoot, and this is the third one, which is probably broken now, but it managed to get me through the assignments. So the reason, though, that I wanted to use this camera in particular is, if you can see here, it's got this logo on it.
The Moscow logo, yeah.
Yes. So this was a commemorative camera, actually, that apparently, as I found out since from being in a Russian camera shop, it was never actually designed to work properly. It was just a cheap camera put together to celebrate the 88 or 89.
84 Olympics, was it?
Moscow Olympics, which I think was in 88. Sorry, I can't remember. And they put this, and they sold it as a commemorative item for that Olympics. So I wanted to use this camera because I was photographing athletes from that Olympics who had medaled. And it's the same Olympics, and I believe Britain was part of the boycott, but certainly Canada and the US, and I believe Britain and some other Western countries boycotted that Olympics over Afghanistan. So I felt like there's a whole generation of athletes out there that, you know, that North America or Canadians or other people didn't even hear about because we boycotted that Olympics. So I thought it'd be fun to go back and track down some of these athletes and photograph them where they are now, which is
let's take a look at these images, because that's a great background story there as regards to why we've got the medium format images here. And these are all basically athletes which took part in the Moscow Olympics with their medals.
And medaled, yeah. And these are athletes who medaled in that Olympics. That's correct.
How did you find using the TLR, the twin lens reflex, and basically what looks and sounds to be a bit of an antiquated camera?
Yeah. It was really painful and stressful, actually. I didn't think it was going to be as painful and stressful. I mean, I don't mind shooting twin reflex. I mean, it's backwards, so you've got to get your head around it.
Yeah.
But this Russian-made camera was like a bit of a nightmare. And I just didn't know if things were going to turn out. And so I would take 3 or 4 different rolls of film with me. I think I took at least 2 rolls on each one of these portraits just to cover my butt in case there was a problem. But like
the film that you've used, I've noticed on a couple of this, because I love it when the film actually shows the type and the numbers. HP5, Ilford HP5, a lot of it.
Yes, the Ilford, and I wanted, my idea when I shot this from the beginning is I mean, what's the point in using a twin reflex if you can't actually like show the whole thing? So the idea was the camera was just as much the story as some of these people that I photographed were. And so it was really important to me that came through in the images. The hardest part was actually tracking them down, because most of these people aren't like just listed on Google, right? So
yeah, exactly. And I think also I was going to say probably the hardest part as well was once the film's been used, how did you bring that back to Canada through the X-ray machines, or did you get it processed out there?
So I got it processed in Moscow, and I got a contact sheet done, and then I would select the images that I liked. I would go back to the lab, and they would scan it, and then I would they would email it to me. I can't remember, and then I would do some post on it, like just getting rid of some hair and some dust. Sure. So the frustrating thing with the lab, though, is everything took 24 hours. So you drop off the film, you get it 24 hours later. You want a contact sheet, it takes 24 more hours. You want a particular image scanned, it would take 24 hours. So it was very frustrating workflow, because I photographed these people over the course of 3 weeks while I was there. And so some film would be in the lab, some would be getting a contact sheet made, some you'd be having scanned. So it was a very awkward process, but it gave us more time to track people down.
Yeah.
And actually,
I'm just going to say, I noticed in the text that you mentioned the 1980 Moscow Summer Olympics.
Oh, 1980. So there we go.
1980, and I think in actual fact the British team did go, because Wells won the 100 meters. I remember he picked the Russian on the dip.
Okay.
Right, the Americans and the Canadians weren't there because of the Afghanistan boycott. So I've really, this is great, where you've basically just come up with an idea and a project, and you've been backed up by your publishers to go and do the work. It's good.
And a lot of those are venues too. So the guy in the top left corner in his hair, that was called like the Crab, and I believe that's where they did. They had basketball, or volleyball. This is a training facility in St. Petersburg. So it wasn't used for the Olympics, but it's where they it's the old Russian czars, like place where he trains the horses, and now they use it for track and field. And it was interesting too, because once we got one person, they helped us find other people because they were all sort of friends.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, so there's a lot of connections going on between the different athletes.
Nice stories behind that. Nice stories behind that one. The next portfolio that I wanted to look at was Ding Dong Mao.
Yeah.
And I looked at these images and I thought, something's going on here. I've got to ask John, what is going on? So over to you. What's going on?
So Ding Dong Mao, if you're having a funeral and you want to create some emotion and some entertainment, you hire Ding Dong Mao and her entertainers. And she promises to make people cry, and that's what she does. So she gets people all worked up into a tizzy of mourning, and puts on this little show. It's pretty crazy, really. But you know, in some of the smaller villages, it's actually what passes for entertainment when somebody dies, and the whole village will come out for the show. There's even a little belly dance thing, which is kind of weird. They're all wearing traditional sort of mourning garb.
Yeah, and what sort of equipment were you using for this particular event?
This was, I believe I was shooting Canon at the time. This is a Canon 5D, I believe.
Right, okay, yeah. Oh, that's when I saw it. I thought, what the hell's going on here? But now you've described it. And was this a project that you decided to do, or was it?
Yes, this was. I was in China working on something with the reporter, and I had heard about this, and so I took a day or two off from the other stories we were doing to work on this.
Yeah. Now, the other one I was going to just touch on very briefly was iPhone camera tips, but I think in actual fact this is more sort of a blog page. I've just seen it, so yeah, I'm not going to go there. Where's the? Tell me about the Cowboy Triptych, because this, again, looking at it, it's an interesting little project you put together here. You've basically got 3 images of the individual that's posing for you.
Correct.
And, so tell me how this idea came about.
I love triptychs, and I've always wanted to do one. I just haven't had a really good idea for one. And I also love shooting rodeos, but I feel like I've done quite a few rodeos. So I was trying to figure out a new way to shoot a rodeo, and this popped into my head. So I contacted the rodeo, which is in sort of rural BC. And I said, I want to come up and I want to do this. I just need a little bit of space inside a barn or something. So they found me a space, and I hung up what did I get? I don't know. I got some kind of cheap blanket or something and just hung it up in the back. And then I used just one octabox. And as people were going to their ride or back from their ride, I would sort of grab them and drag them into my little makeshift studio at the side of the rodeo grounds.
Now these are all square format again. So what gear were you using for this?
This is a Canon 5D Mark III and a 50mm lens. I made it square and I put the black border.
Yeah, you cropped it, deliberately. Yeah. Nice effect with the triptych. I like triptychs as well. There's something which I haven't really done, sort of, if anything, with my camera club, done a 5 or an 8 panel, sometimes a 10 panel, which is very difficult to get the story going from start to end, and making sure you've got a quality image right in the middle, which keeps the attention flowing through. But the interesting project. And it's a great website because it really shows the person looking for your work exactly what you're all about. We've got the CAJ portfolio, which is, as we say, so dynamic in the range of imagery here. Perhaps you'd just like to talk us through some of this. I love this surfer one. This is absolutely superb. It's in the polar bear.
So the website, I try to mix up as much as possible. I try not to do different categories so much as different styles of photography, I guess. And that's why you'll see a lot of stories there, because if it's photojournalism, and that's what's important to me. So I like try and get variety instead of, I know a lot of people have their websites broken down by category. I prefer variety and stuff that you may not see every day, I guess.
Yeah.
Like this is a Star Trails photo, which
amazing star trails.
It's it was in Joshua Tree Park in California.
So, is there a portfolio here of your recent work with the Canadian Olympic team?
No, because if I had another hour, I would have put that up.
Right, it's my fault.
That's okay.
Did you put some up on Flickr or something like that before?
Instagram. There's some
Instagram. There's some on there. That's right. Yeah.
And also, if you want, I can send you a link from the Globe and Mail website that has a gallery of like 10 or 12 images.
Yeah, I'd like to do that because I in my short little blog of the show, I'd like to put as much advertisement up as of your sites and of your social network that you're involved with. So tell me about the idea for the Canadian team down in Rio. How did that come about?
What do you mean going down to the Olympics?
You went down to the Olympics. Was that an idea that you had, or was it just basically you were expected to be there?
Oh, there was an assignment from the Globe and Mail, and so this is what my 6th Olympics for the Globe and Mail. It's just something they decided a year ago that they still want to spend the time and energy investment of sending a photographer down. And so my mandate is to go down to the Olympics and, illustrate some of the work the reporters are doing, but also, follow the Canadian athletes around and find out what, hopefully, try and use my energy to figure out when and how they're going to medal. And because we have lists of potential athletes and how they're going to do. And so I use that information to sort of figure out my day.
And did you get an opportunity to go off plan, so to speak? In other words, start looking around Rio and doing some sort of social type work. So
the first 2 days I did that. Actually, I spent a great deal of time the first 2 days tracking down. I guess the real Rio. I don't know, parts of Rio. We were doing a cover story about Rio and the upcoming Olympics, and so that's what I spent my first couple of days on. Yeah.
Okay. So, just want to ask you now at this stage, bearing in mind you've really seems as though you nailed the flag to the mast on journalism at a very sort of early age. Yes. Who would you say would be your favorite photographer?
I guess it's more, I like to have more of a collection of photographers. Anybody obviously that's done photojournalism is mostly, where I sort of focus my energy and time. I think I a lot of the photographers from the Vietnam War, that was the other influence. Not that old. I often wish I'd been born closer to that date because I think that's a real pinnacle in photojournalism's history was the Vietnam War. And so I do as a child remember looking back and looking at those images and that type of photography. But also I was really interested in, any documentary about Vietnam. So I spent, time looking at the photographers who had produced work from that. I think, Salgado Sebastian would really, I guess, be the ultimate photojournalist out there. He's done some amazing work. But really there's, that's just to highlight one, but there's so many. I feel like I just suck the energy of many different photographers.
I do agree with you guys when you mentioned about Vietnam, because I think we're around about the same sort of age, to be honest with you. And I get the impression that Vietnam War was one of these wars which really, because of the photojournalism, it was really came to the fore, and it was in the magazines, it was on the front pages of the newspapers, and obviously at the same time it was film of it on the TVs. Mm-hmm. But the likes of photographers like Don McCullen, who's the famous photographer as well, and it started to be shown in the photographic magazines over here, and it really was. It sort of just the images just hit you in the face. There was fantastic work that those guys were doing. There's a couple of other names which I'm not really 100% sure about. Was there a photographer, Griffith? It's a Magnum. Griffith Jones, and was there another one called Tim Page?
Tim Page, a lot of work in Cambodia and Vietnam.
Yeah, that's right. And those three names really come to mind. Funnily enough, when on my last show, the 100th show, Ted Forbes and I talked about moments in history. And I did name Vietnam War in terms of a photographic photojournalistic major influential point of that time. Which brings me to my next question. Who would you say has been the most influential in your photographic career?
Well, again, not one particular person, which I think is good, actually, because I think it's good to have a variety of people. And I would say a lot of my colleagues along the way. When I was 21, I left Canada and moved to Hong Kong, where I worked for 4 years before moving to Thailand, where I also worked. And I met a lot of people along that way that really opened up my eyes to different kinds of photography and different styles of photography. Especially in Hong Kong, we were thrown into a pot of Hong Kong Chinese photographers, mainland Chinese photographers from New Zealand, Australia, England, American. And for me, that was probably, I think a very influential experience, getting and working with and getting to know so many different photographers from around the world, and seeing how they do things was incredible influence for me. Instead of being stuck, I mean, now with the internet, I think people can get that experience to some degree. But in '91, you only saw the work of the person you could reach out and touch, and now it's different. So, I was lucky in that I met a lot of different people. And I guess the same could be said for those photographers that were in Vietnam and Cambodia during those rough times.
Yeah, because they stuck together, didn't they? They're basically, they were
a lot of different places, and they came together. And it's also the story of Magnum, right?
Exactly right. Yeah,
photographers from a lot of different places, and they were all influenced each other. So hopefully,
interesting you said that, actually. So you're out in Hong Kong and Thailand, you're with a group of photographers from basically all over the world, and you're sort of pooling ideas together. Oh, have you been down to here? Have you tried this, so on and so forth? That sort of conversation, I suppose, was happening in the bars when you weren't doing your work.
Yeah, we also drank a bit, but
oh, of course you do. That goes without saying. Come on. So after photojournalists, what's next for John Lehmann? Is there is it a case of carry on until basically I can't press the shutter anymore, or are you going to sort of do and it's probably not the same sort of extreme like a Don McCullum who can't go to do war anymore and he's just doing these great, fantastic landscapes. What's your next move?
I mean, I'm lucky because my career has been very varied, and the assignments I do are quite varied. I'm a long way from retiring yet, but I love photojournalism and I'm passionate about it. And I'm, I like to educate and teach and influence and do it. And I would like to do that for a bit longer. And,
sure.
I think, it's definitely part of me. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do next. I think at some point I will move on, and maybe I would like to do, if I was to retire, I'd probably like to do work for maybe some NGOs and donate my time and give them my skills and my artistic ability for a good cause. It's probably what I would do.
Yeah, that's a nice touch. Just one final question I want to ask you, which I meant to back on the when you're out in Hong Kong and Thailand. Did you ever get into a serious situation where you were really worried as regards to what was going to happen in the next half hour, so to speak?
There was, I mean, looking back, they're probably not as serious as I thought they were at the time. But, I would spend some time in Cambodia, which was pretty rough at the time. Khmer Rouge was parts of it. And I ran in afoul of what's the country beside Burmese government.
Burmese government, yeah.
Took some pictures they were not really flattered with. They confiscated my film and held me for a while. But I've been very lucky and I guess cautious. And I've certainly done some stupid things. I've gone. I guess the stupidest thing I ever did was climb up a tower that was under construction. And we went out and we took some pictures, and it was not a very safe situation. That was probably the stupidest thing I ever did. But I think you can have a long and healthy career, but you got to weigh the risks for the rewards. And You know, I think the work that photojournalists do in war zones are amazing, but there's also a lot of work that needs to be done that's just as important outside of war zones. And so I've never seen a huge need or desire for myself to go and pursue that. You know, I'm not anti-conflict. You know, I covered some of the uprising in Ukraine 2 years ago.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But that's probably as far as I would want to go, and because I think there's a lot of other work out there too.
And there's obviously just recently, obviously, there's a fair amount of danger when you're going out to these war zones, because you just don't know who, in actual fact, you're going to be involved with, whether you're tied to a unit or whether you're in actual fact trying to do it on your own speed, so to speak. It's a very dangerous world out there for the type of work that the war photographers do.
Absolutely, yeah, very dangerous.
John, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been fascinating to listen to how your career's built up over a period of time, and all the best for the future. Congratulations on your latest award, and let's hope you win a few more in the future.
Thank you.
Anyway, thanks for everyone that has watched or will watch in the future on YouTube. And that's the end of the show. And as I always say, if you're going out shooting this weekend, yes, take your camera, but leave your camera bag at home. All the best to you. Bye for now.